Just a note about the first story, Dreams About Death, Lost Loved Ones, and Creeping Ivy. This story first appeared in my series 3 Women's Paranormal Stories, which was uploaded November 19 of 2015. It's a bit of a repeat, so if you've already listened to it, the point in time which you can fast forward to story number 2 is listed right here on my picture. Thank you. This is kind of weird to type up because even just talking about it out loud makes my throat feel tight and the words get difficult. It's not something that frightens me, but it's something that triggers a very deep emotional response in me, as it's so specific and difficult to explain. It's 100% true, but maybe won't sound it, which is okay. Believe it or not, I just wanted to see if anyone had any similar experiences. So a couple of years ago, my friend who lives overseas told me a very sad story about how the night her grandpa died, her mom had a nightmare that she was watching the outside of their house, and her father, friend's grandpa, was outside banging on the windows and doors, trying to get in, while tendrils of ivy covered the whole exterior of the house, keeping him out. When she woke with a start from the nightmare, she knew he was dead, and got a call from the hospice an hour later to tell her. I told my mom about this during one of our fun little chats about the paranormal, what we believe and don't believe, just as an interesting and sad story, as my mom feels her grandma visits her quite often in dreams. Also, when her own father was dying of cancer, she was awoken by him shouting her name and got a phone call soon after to say he had passed. This is super common and nothing to write home about, but quite moving. When I told her about the ivy dream, she started laughing because she was so freaked out, and when it subsided, was finally able to tell me that when her best friend had breast cancer years ago, when she was at her weakest, and it was touch and go on whether the chemo was going to save her or kill her, she had pneumonia at this point. She fell asleep in her bedroom and had a vivid dream of ivy covering the inside of her room and her body. She told my mom she thought in the dream, "This is it then, I'm done." In the dream, her father, who had just died 2 years before, came running into her room and pulled the ivy off her, and it retreated out of the windows, at which point she woke up. That was the worst point of her fight with cancer, and from there she improved and is now fine and cancer-free. I just wanted to share these 2 dreams that occurred separately to 2 people who will never know each other on opposite sides of the world. I'm not saying it's definitely paranormal, but it's so specific that it makes my hair stand up on end when I think about it. Later on, my friend's mom had another dream where her son was trying to get in the house, which was again being covered with ivy, and woke up terrified, only to find he was perfectly fine and it was just a bad dream. I dreamt a few months back that ivy was creeping through my window to get me, but again, it was just a bad dream. I am, knock on wood, still alive. So anyway, that's that. Weird, interesting, creepy, awesome ivy death dreams. I lost my father to stage 4 lung cancer about 3 years ago this month. When I was younger, we were very close, but due to my parents' divorce and my father's pride, he moved away and we were pretty distant during my late teens, early 20s. I had a lot of resentment and anger, but upon finding out about his condition, all of that got put aside to take care of my dad and spend as much time with him as I possibly could before the inevitable happened. 18 months of chemotherapy and radiation treatment, and he was still convinced he could beat it. But we all knew. Not even 36 hours into hospice care after seeing myself, my older brother, and my mom for what would be the last time, he passed away in his sleep. good came from his passing. My older brother and I have completely reconnected with his side of the family and are now in open communication with them. Some of those members I hadn't seen or talked to in 15 years prior to my father passing. So, maybe 3 to 4 months after my father passed away, I had this incredibly vivid dream, like wake up in tears vivid. In my dream, it was myself, my boyfriend, and a close friend of ours. We were in a movie theater. My friend and boyfriend were ahead of me, heading towards the seats they chose for us. As we were walking, I bumped into someone and did the usual, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry" thing, but when I looked up, it was my dad. He was just staring at me, smiling. I heard my boyfriend behind me call out my name, which made me look back at him and our friend. When I turned back to look at my dad again, he was gone. I immediately woke up after that with tears in my eyes. I didn't know what to think at the time. I kind of just let it pass. I was still grieving. I would still choke up at random thoughts of my dad or things that would remind me of him. Time passed. I moved on with my life as any normal person in my situation would. Not even a week later, my boyfriend and I are visiting his grandparents, and I get a text from my uncle, Dad's brother. I couldn't even read the entire text for the first time I looked at it. It immediately made me start crying. I revisited the text a few hours later, and it was my uncle telling me he had a dream about my dad the night before. Only this time, my dad spoke to him. It was similar to mine, only the message is what actually got to me. My uncle said my dad wanted him to tell me and my brother he's okay. He's happy now, and he's not in pain anymore. That it's okay. We can let him go now, and he'll always be watching over us. I miss him dearly and think about him often. I know he's somewhere, watching over me and my brother. And though I lost him so early in my life, I cherish all the memories I have of him and wouldn't trade any of them for the world. I was born when my mom was barely 16, and despite being an otherwise conservative, government-employed 1950s, 60s era crew-cut-wearing dad, my maternal grandfather was thrilled. He even referred to me as a glitch when my teenage parents shared the news. Glitch is a rather clever amalgamation of my parents' first names. It seems crazy to say, especially since my dad's side of the family showed a bias against Mom and I both for being permanent reminders of the family shame. But Papa and Grandma admitted that Mom was mature beyond her years and willingly emancipated her to marry my dad when most parents would have been pressing charges of statutory rape. At conception, Mom was 15, Dad 19. It took a long time before I realized how wrong that was. My grandfather had been diagnosed with juvenile sugar diabetes at age 7. Back in those days, insulin dependence meant a life cut short. He was told he wouldn't live past 40. The same doctor cared for Papa for decades. According to family lore, each appointment began with, "Let's see how you are still alive." Papa was a fighter, but it was hard, and Mom began preparing us from a young age. "Make sure you spend as much time as you can with Grandpa," she would say. "We don't know how long he'll be around." Over time, his joints began to fail. He went blind, neuropathy took the feeling in his feet, and heart trouble began. After a couple of heart attacks, we were convinced that Mom was right. Papa could leave us at any time. Whenever the phone rang past bedtime or early in the morning, my heart stopped. I was in high school when we got the worst call. He was being transported to Stanford to undergo a quadruple bypass, but he made a full recovery and lived another 15 years. Papa received a gift of 3 framed rebirth certificates from the fire department. something he proudly hung on the wall. We all have a rather twisted sense of humor. Those heroic men who responded to the 9/11 call managed to bring him back to life 3 times. They refused to give up on him. To show our appreciation, my uncle and his family, who lived with Papa and Grandma, bought gifts for each of the 5 responders who worked so hard to keep Papa with us. I still get emotional when I think about it. I'm so grateful for the years they gave us. Papa was able to be at my wedding and met his great-grandkids because of these men and their dedication. My uncle told us what happened at the firehouse, and it became family legend. He even repeated it during Papa's eulogy, much to the displeasure of the religious leaders presiding over the memorial. I know my uncle. He is a skeptic who loves pranks, but his tell is a devilish glint in his eyes when he is up to something. There was nothing but sincerity as he shared the story. He meant every word. I'll never forget his words as I type this. I even hear it in his voice. He, Grandma, and my cousins went to the firehouse to deliver the gifts and immediately recognized 4 of the men to whom Papa now owed his life. After chatting for a bit, they asked about the 5th man. The men said it had only been them. My uncle, his eldest daughter, and Grandma insist to this day that there had been 5 around Papa that night. They'd begun to describe the 5th man's looks and where he had been during the rescue when my uncle began scanning the wall and found a picture of the whole crew.
There, that's him.
The firemen looked stunned. One of them said,
There was a lot going on. It could have just looked like there were more of us. You had a lot on your minds.
My family was sure. My uncle insisted, but began growing suspicious as he said,
No, that's the guy. We're positive.
The fireman stared at the calendar while the others glanced at each other and then began to avoid eye contact with my uncle. After what seemed like forever, he said the words that made us all believers.
He was killed on a call a few weeks before yours. He couldn't have been there.
My uncle finished by telling me that they all got goosebumps and that Papa had a very special helper that night. During the eulogy, Uncle added that the experience allowed him to have a better understanding of death and that it changed his perspective. When he recovered, Papa went to the firehouse too. He wanted to offer his thanks in person. Despite being between life and death, he remembered 5 men around him. He said he only clearly saw one face. The rest were all just big black shadows rushing around. As a test, my uncle asked Grandpa to point out the man he saw without telling him about the extraordinary circumstances. He went right to the same picture and pointed to the fallen hero. This man was so dedicated to helping others that he was there to ensure Papa didn't leave us until it was really his time. I have a hard time reconciling my personal experiences with any one faith or another, but I know that we don't just disappear. And like that 5th responder, some of us continue to do the work that defined us even after we've left the physical world behind. Again, not the scariest of tales, but I thought I'd share anyhow. The anniversary of Papa's death is coming, and writing this has helped me to remember that he didn't leave us until he was good and ready, and I firmly believe he checks in on us every so often. There are times I am certain if I were to turn around fast enough, I'd see him standing behind me, smiling the smile I grew up loving and feeling the pride he had in me. It's hard to describe, but the energy seems almost tangible. I have been disabled by a condition that runs on his side of the family, so when I am feeling beaten down, that's when I feel his presence the strongest. I miss him every day, but I will never stop being grateful for the years those 5 special souls gave back to us, or for the comfort I take knowing that we don't just disappear. When our bodies cannot go on, our energy remains. Creepy Mina here of the Worst Nightmare channel. I hope you enjoyed those 3 stories of women's dreams and experiences with their lost loved ones. Now, there was a repeat there from another video. It didn't have a lot of views, and it went well with this theme, so I thought I'd use it again. Please comment below if you like that or not, and please comment if you like paranormal videos or if you prefer the true crime videos. I'd be interested in knowing that. So, you know the drill. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share on your favorite social networking platform. Follow me on Twitter for advance notice of all uploaded videos. And always remember to stay safe.